Welcome to JonGetsGames. This is part one of a two-part series in which I'm going to go through my top 20 board games of all time as of January 2016. In this video, I'll be going through numbers 20 through 11, and then in the second video, I'll cover the top 10. I've tried to categorize these in order of my favorite games, what I think I enjoy more than others, so they're not necessarily better games than others based on their ranking. It's more just how I feel when I'm playing them, and this was quite difficult to do. I think I've got it pretty much nailed down, and let's jump into it. Number 20 is Qwirkle. This is a very small card game, which looks pretty unseeming, like, oh, how much game can be in there? But it really surprised me. I played this game a ton. In fact, it usually gets played multiple times, and whenever I teach this game to somebody, they're like, what? How can a game with little colored geckos on singular colored cards be this interesting? And it's because it's a very distilled down version of an interesting mechanic, which is essentially, do I take stuff now, or do I wait till later when I might get better stuff, or I might get worse stuff? So what you're doing in the game is you are either taking goods, or you draw a random card from the top of the deck and you put it down into a pile, but then other people get to take their turns and do the same thing. Do they now take those goods, or do they draw a card from the pile and seed it onto a row? So you really need to think, do I grab it now? Because if I don't, then all the good stuff might be gone, and by the time it comes back around to me, I might have terrible stuff because you're trying to do simple set collection. That decision is so well honed into this game, so it's just a pristine version of it. I love it. It's great in other games, and this game is a perfect example. Number 19 is Skull, and this is a relatively new addition into my collection. However, it's very reminiscent of Liar's Dice, which I've been loving playing for many years now. In fact, it's one of the early games that I was taught in this kind of board game renaissance in my own life, which kind of started in around 2008. So anyway, Skull is a push your luck kind of bluffing game where you are just putting coasters down, beautifully illustrated coasters. It's just a beautiful game. And you, at some point, start challenging and trying to bid how many coasters you can flip up without showing a skull tile. And you might intentionally say a number that you know is wrong, trying to get other people to bid up so that they stumble and fall when they bid too high and they fail, they reveal a skull. It's a game where the mechanics are incredibly simple, but really you're playing the opponents around the table. And unlike Liar's Dice, it does not potentially take forever to play. It can be a 8 to 20 minute experience as opposed to being like a 40-minute experience based on the number of players. So I really, really love Skull. Number 18 is Qwirkle, and this would have been a really big surprise to John as of 2010, because back then I did not like the game at all. I just did not get it. But the thing that really got me enjoying it was the iOS app, playing it on my iPad, specifically with Jess. I came to realize that this is a brilliant two-player game specifically. It plays great with 3 and 4 players as well, but it's a tile-laying game where you're putting just these symbols down. It's kind of like Scrabble, but you don't need to know any vocabulary. It's just matching symbols and matching colors, and it's really good, especially in a two-player game. You go back and forth, and there's so many interesting places to put that make you feel great when you're like, oh my gosh, this tile fits right there, and you put it there, and you score all these points, and it just feels good. I am surprised at how much I like this game. It's got some huge staying power. I played it over 20 times, and it's not a game I want to play every week, but it's a very solid game I could see playing many years in the future. Number 17 is Celtis, and this is another game actually where I came to really enjoy it on the iPad in its electronic form, but we enjoyed it so much that we went out of our way to get a cardboard version of the game, and I think I actually enjoy it more in cardboard than I did on the iPad. It's a bigger version of Lost Cities, essentially, where you have a hand of cards and all you do every turn is play one card and draw a card. That's it. Super simple turns. But when you're playing these cards down, you are putting them into suited columns of the specific color that they are. And in Celtis, you are either ascending with the value of the card or descending, going from 0 to 10 in the game. And as you're doing these things, you are pushing little stones up these tracks on the board. And the really great thing about Celtis, the reason I like it so much, is because there are all these little bonus tiles that are randomly dispersed throughout the board. And so that means every time you play, it's going to feel a little bit different. Certain tracks are going to be better, and certain will be worse based off of the random disbursement of those little tokens. And as you play these cards, you move the tokens down those tracks, and you can do double moves and get points here, and there's a little bit of a race to get specific gems before other people do. It's got a whole bunch of things going on. I will say there's a bit of randomness in there. Sometimes you feel like you just did not draw the right cards at all, but ultimately, I think it's got some great decisions, and I've really enjoyed playing it. Number 16 is Mysterium, but specifically not the English Asmodee Mysterium version. There are actually 3 versions of this game that have come out, that English one, a Polish one, and a Ukrainian one. I own Tajemnicze Domostwo, which is the Polish box, but I use the Ukrainian rules, and that is the way I love to play it. And the way the game works is it's fully cooperative, everybody's around a table, but one person is a ghost who's hiding in the walls, and all they can do is pass these super surreal, beautiful cards to everybody else around the table who are psychic investigators who are trying to interpret these cards as dreams. You know, they wake up and like, I had a crazy dream with these 3 cards in it, and figure out what those cards are saying about a specific murder that happened 100 years ago. You got murder weapons, locations, and people, and they have these beautifully illustrated cards, and you're trying to match everything up, and it's cooperative. Everybody is specifically getting their own dreams, but everybody's working on each other's. It's a great cooperative experience, and you can essentially play the game in 2 different ways. If you're the ghost, it plays very differently than if you're a psychic investigator, and I really like that variety. I've played the game a whole bunch of times. I've cooled on it a little bit just because, well, there are other games out there, and I've played Mysterium so much I don't want to burn myself out on those specific cards, but it's a very solid cooperative game. And the other big bonus to it is it's super easy to teach with new players, especially people not used to board games in general. You can lay the game out and just teach it while you play. There's almost like 20 seconds of preamble before you just jump into the game, as long as the ghost knows how to play already. Number 15 is Tichu, and I have 78 logged plays of this since 2010, and I know I played it at least 20 times before I even started logging my games back then, so I played this game a ton. It is a card game with 56 cards in the deck, and 52 of those cards will be very familiar to you because they're a standard deck of cards, 2 through ace in 4 different suits. But then there are 4 special Joker cards that are all different. There's the Phoenix, the Dragon, the Mahjong, and the Dog. And they all do different things, and the goal of this game is to just play all your cards before the other team does, because it's a 4-player game of 2 teams. The person sitting across the table from you is your partner, and the game is pretty good. You're playing like full houses and straights and pairs and even just single high cards, and that's all fun and games. But the reason this game is great is because of the betting aspect. You can bet points before you play a single card that you personally will play all your cards first. And at that moment, the game really comes alive, because now your partner across the table doesn't know what you have in your hand, but they're trying to play cards not to win themselves, but to help you play all your cards first, because you want to win that bet. And it's the best version of gambling without money I've ever seen. You really feel that sweat pouring tension as you're getting really close to getting in, and then, you know, somebody does a surprise thing and they break your Tichu, and that's the bet. It's called a Tichu, and you feel so crestfallen, or you feel victorious when you somehow managed to get all your cards down first. There are many great moments to this game, and there's a reason I played this game close to 100 times. I don't play it that much anymore, but I can see it coming out a couple times a year for a very long time in the future. Number 14 is Seven Wonders Duel, and this is a very new game into my collection. I only played it for the first time about 3 months ago, but it's really blown me away. It's a very solid 2-player only game where you feel like you're doing all sorts of stuff, but the game ends in only 20 minutes. It takes the theme and a lot of mechanics from the original Seven Wonders, which played up to 7 players, distills it down into a 2-player experience where you actually have all the cards face up, well, some are face up and some are face down, on the table, and you pull cards from the center of the table to build them into your little tableau, as opposed to passing around hands of cards and drafting cards from them. I really like that I don't have to worry about the memory aspect anymore of what cards were in that hand that I just passed over. It's just a great experience. You're building little engines. You do all sorts of little fun things in like 15 to 20 minutes. It's a great package, a beautiful game. It's really impressed me. Number 13 is Roll for the Galaxy, which is the dice version of Race for the Galaxy, which was a card game. I never really liked Race for the Galaxy. It's okay, I've played it a few times over the last 6 years, but it never really grabbed me. Roll for the Galaxy definitely did. It's a peculiar little dice game where you are doing similar things to Race for the Galaxy, where you are picking one roll every turn and everybody reveals those rolls and everybody gets to do all the rolls that everybody else picked. But in this game, you also have a kind of pool building aspect where you're getting different dice, maybe better dice or just specifically engineered dice to your specific engine that you're trying to build into your area to roll those, and they have various different pips. All the dice are custom, and you can assign them to the different actions, and the more dice you assign to an action, the better you do that action. And there's all sorts of things you can do to change the dice pips and shift dice around, and you're also building an engine by colonizing worlds and getting developments which will let you make resources for points and then just get cool engine-y things. So when you do this, you also get this, and you maybe get a discount on that. And ultimately, the game is completely simultaneous, so it goes very quickly, and it usually takes like 30 minutes to play, but it feels like an hour to hour and 15-minute satisfying experience. I've really enjoyed playing it, and it's just a little peculiar to teach to other people. You kind of have to go through a full round or two before it clicks, and you have to help people out with that first turn, but I can get over that. I see myself liking this one for quite a while. Number 12 is Eclipse, which is this massive, sprawling, very long-playing space opera game where you start as an alien race and you explore into the depths of the galaxy, finding new planets, building ships, colonizing worlds. There's definitely a great Euro engine aspect to it where you generate more resources, generate money, build ships, and get influence, get more actions, but then you're going to come into conflict with other players, and then you need to start fighting them in space with these massive, epic space battles where you're throwing tons of dice. But the really cool part about this is that you can modify the blueprints of all your ships. It's not like, oh, every dreadnought does this and every cruiser does that. No, your dreadnought might have tons of guns on it, just bristling with guns, and you just roll like 12 dice at your opponent, but it dies really fast. It's very fragile because you only have so much power and slots on the ship to do stuff, versus your opponent might have like 2 guns on it, but be really, really hard to kill, and they might end up getting that one lucky shot and blow up your amazing ship, even though you threw so many dice at them. And it has this great Cold War feel to it. When a battle is going to happen, you can kind of see it coming a turn or two ahead because movement can be a bit slow, and you realize, okay, I'm going to be fighting that other person there, and you start reprogramming your ships to aim at their weaknesses, but then they see you doing that, so they reprogram their ships to aim at your weaknesses. But now you need to reprogram your ships, and it has this amazing thing where you're just jostling back and forth until finally, boom, you have this huge fight, and you just throw all these dice around. It's really satisfying, even though there is some randomness with those dice. I love the sprawling, epic feel to the game. It does not hit the table very often anymore because it does take like 3 to 4 hours to play, but it is such a solid, really, really cool design. I really enjoyed playing it in the past, and I look forward to playing it again in the future. And now for the last game of part 1, which is number 11, and that's Concordia. This is the prototypical trading in the Mediterranean style theme where you're sailing boats around and you're making goods and you're turning them into money, and you're also trading some goods into other goods to make more cities that make goods. I'm okay with that theme in general, but the thing that really makes this game stand out is the brilliantly simple and elegant turn mechanic, where all you do on a turn is take one card from your hand and put it down on the table, and you just play that card, and it's the next person's turn. You're not doing multiple different things, you're not adjusting action points or anything. No, you just play a single card, and oftentimes the game plays quite quickly because these cards don't do that much, so it will scoot around the table and then you get to take another turn. And the really cool thing about this game is that you can spend your resources, these goods that you're making in the Mediterranean, to buy new cards that do more powerful, specialized things and put them directly in your hand, and then you can play that card. So the more cards that you buy, the longer you can go until you need to pull all your cards back up into your hand, because you will just run out of cards at a certain point and essentially have a very lame turn. The other cool thing about this is you are honing your endgame victory point structure as you're buying these cards. Each card is worth some number of victory points based off of stuff on the board. One card might be worth points for the number of wine cities you have. Another card just gives you points for how spread out you've been. And at a certain point in the game, you say, well, I might be buying this card specifically for the endgame points on the bottom because it really aligns with what I've been doing all game, even though I don't actually like the power very much. And ultimately, this game, I don't know, takes like an hour 15, hour and a half to play. It's a very satisfying experience. I love that hand building and simple turn structure. It's a very solid game. So that wraps up part 1. Next week, I'll be posting my numbers 10 through 1 favorite games of all time as of this moment. And if you're watching this video from the future, please click on the buttons to jump over and you can start watching those right away. If you'd like to see more vlogs like this one, as well as in-depth board game reviews and full game playthroughs, please subscribe to my channel. Also, you can directly support the channel at patreon.com/JonGetsGames. Thanks for watching.